I love it when you call me Big Papa. Christopher Wallace was born in Brooklyn, New York in 1972, and he's arguably one of the greatest rappers ever, but he is definitely one of the best artists to ever exist. One thing about Big is his style is insane, and people talk about his style for being a dude who's over 300 pounds and 6'4". But honestly, even if he wasn't that big, no pun intended, his style is second to none. And we're going to break it down in this video. So make sure you leave a like and subscribe. The early days. Early on in his career, he was more of a grimy and rough around the edges type of artist. He didn't even have an album out yet, but he was heavily in the street, but he was still making tapes here and there. Given his background in hustling in the streets of Brooklyn, his style at that time made a lot of sense. And it was very on brand because he wanted to portray that hardcore image that people like Snoop had on the West. The pieces Biggie would wear at that time were basically sports team merchandise, Timberlands, jerseys, baggy jeans, sweatbands, and baseball caps. These were obviously popular in the 1990s and people still wear them currently. I would say that he wasn't influential yet at this stage of his career, but the next part, he was definitely out of here. So September 13th, 1994, one of the most pivotal albums in hip-hop history came on the streets, and it was called Ready to Die. It has no misses on it, and it's a bangers all day, every single day. Now, this is a key moment in his life because this is when his style actually changed the most. Because now he has more money, obviously more problems, but he has more money. Like he said in his song, money, clothes, and hoes is all a dude knows. His style definitely became more flashier, more flamboyant, and in your face. And this is partially because of the jiggy element that Diddy added, being a kid from Harlem. But the thing that I liked about this era is that he still had the hardcore element with it, and then he was still doing the flashy stuff at the same time. So it was like the best of both worlds, no Hannah Montana. And this is mainly because Puffy wanted to be more mainstream and more palatable to mainstream America, which does make sense from a profit standpoint. And this is where you start seeing him wearing the most infamous sweater of all time, the Coogee sweater, which every dude in New York at the time did have during this era, like 94, 95. And I would say that this is probably one of the most influential pieces of clothing in not just hip-hop, but in fashion in general. And I would say it's his most iconic piece other than the Versace shades. And Coogee is a brand from Australia, not to be confused with the Cosby sweater. It's completely different. So what their technique is basically 3D knit, and it's very colorful, very in your face, very brash. And honestly, I had to cop one myself because I just love that sweater so much. As I said, once again, he's known for wearing the Versace shades and as well as wearing their t-shirts and obviously their button-ups as well. During this time, he still paired it with like baggier pants and jeans, and he would wear also Dolce & Gabbana, but he would also pair it off with Tim's or Clark Wallabies. Being that he's Jamaican, it makes sense. That's his background, so it does make sense. Then he also would wear Kangol hats as well, and of course the Coogee sweater. So those are just key pieces that he would wear during this time of his first album. Like most rappers, he would talk about the type of clothes that he likes and that he was wearing at the moment or that he thinks is cool. And then that obviously influences people who listen to that music to dress that way. So he would also talk about wearing Nautica and talking about DKNY and all that stuff. But this is more like 96, right before he dropped his second studio album. But you hear him talking about that on features like on Jay-Z's Reasonable Doubt. And when it comes to sport and jewelry, he's always wearing the Cubans and, of course, the infamous Jesus piece. So when you go to 97, he's pretty much the biggest rapper in the world at the time. Unfortunately, one of his frenemies passed away, as in Tupac Shakur, so he had the world by storm. Now, New York was his at the time. He was still battling it with Nas because Nas dropped It Was Written and he got it back, but right as Biggie was doing his press conference to drop Life After Death, Biggie took the crown back, and of course you guys know how that went. But this is where his style changed a little bit more. As you can see in more of his performances on bigger stages at that time, he wore more suits and stuff, which is mainly Puffy's idea, not his. But he just went with it because Puff brought him this far, so he just did that. And then when it came to smaller venues and stuff, he would dress more street, more his style, more what he's comfortable wearing, which would be like more semi-formal. But at this time in his life, he was 24 years old, turning 25 if he made it through that year. And at this time in his life, so it was more like a semi-formal look in between like street, or like I guess high street if you want to call it that. And he would still wear like obviously the youthful brands and stuff like that, but you would see him mainly just wear like button ups and like baggy pants, or like button ups and like slacks or whatever, and then you would wear it with Tim's or like Clark's or sneakers. And I was today years old when I found out that he wore the Reebok Questions, but he got them from Allen Iverson himself, hand delivered it to him to wear, and he actually wore it in the Hypnotize video if you look at it on YouTube. And in this time, he was mainly wearing like leather jackets and stuff. There was a nice red leather jacket that he wore, and then he was sporting a lot of Averex jackets. So you could see his style kind of maturing in that sense, but it's still him. It's still New York. It's still Brooklyn style. And then obviously he had to have a cane on him because of the fact that he got crippled in an injury because he was in a car wreck earlier in 96. So that's where the line where Little C's crippled me came from, and Long Kiss Goodnight, I think. And then you would see him wearing like derby hats on occasion, but he would mainly just wear the Kangol hat, or at that time he would just wear no hat. Unfortunately, his life was cut short due to gun violence, and his legacy in music lives on forever and it will never end. But also, you gotta look at his fashion sense and how he influences dudes like me today. He was one of my biggest inspirations in fashion growing up when I would look back at his old interviews and all that stuff, and I always liked this type of clothes that he was sporting. And because he's a taller guy, it helped me too, because I'm like 6'6", so it does help. But honestly, whether you're big or small, no pun intended, you can rock his style. And if you're just getting into fashion, I think he's one of the people that you should look up to when it comes to getting your style. And if you didn't know he had style, if you don't know, now you know. Thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe. And with that said, this is your boy Darius D signing off. Y'all stay suave, live long, and prosper.